Hello, my name is Julie, and today I'll be doing a demo of the SAT writing and vocab class for the summer 2022 session I will be teaching. A little bit about me. I finished my bachelor's at NYU, and after that, I've been teaching at various academies over the past couple years, including here at Most, as well as other Hug ones such as Elite and Memo. I teach mainly SAT writing and vocab, as well as SAT reading and AP language, college essays, and mostly writing or English related subjects. All right, diving right into the summer schedule here. I've listed out all of the concepts that we will be going over. Of course, depending on the pace of the students, this is going to be subject to change. And as you can see here, we're going to be reviewing the vocab concepts. These ones are going to be our vocab concepts, and the rest are the writing and grammar concepts. As you can see, there aren't too many vocab concepts, so we will have vocab homework every day, as well as, of course, additional vocabulary to memorize. Vocab is, of course, important if you want to understand the passages as well as answer questions. So it is something that the students must have to be diligent about while preparing for the SAT. We will also be reviewing about 2 to 3 writing concepts per week, and we will have additional homework focusing on specifically these ideas. And of course, we will have 1 full writing set every day. And based on that writing set, we will have a review Q&A session in class on this as well. Okay, moving on to the sample vocabulary lesson. We're going to be looking at some transitional words today. As you can see, I've listed out some example transitional words down below, and they have been split into 3 different types. The different types is especially important for these transitional words. The first one we're going to look at here is the continue. The continue is going to be connecting these 2 ideas, right? More details, continuation, all of that is going to be a continuation idea. So continuation can also be a little bit more specific, and it can fall under maybe like comparisons, or there can also be details or examples. Those all fall under the continuation idea because you're adding on to one idea and continuing it or adding more details to it. So all of these ones down here, these are all continuation. So if we take a look at this example here, these 2 sentences, whales are big and they live in the ocean. So first and foremost, we know that whales are big. This is going to be a characteristic or a trait of a whale. Same thing here. This is also going to be another characteristic. So since these 2 are both characteristics, we know that they are both describing, right? These both describe the whales. So since they are both describing, we want big and ocean. Big and ocean, they're not necessarily going to be something else other than a continuation idea, right? It's not going to cause, or it's not going to be as a result of something, or it's not going to be an opposite idea. So the only one that makes sense in this instance, when we're trying to connect these 2 sentences, is going to be a continuation, right? We want to use a word or a transitional word that is going to connect these 2 sentences with a continuation transitional word. So we want to use something like and, right? Whales are big and they live in the ocean. Whales are big, moreover, they live in the ocean. So any of these words here that are marked here, they can be used to connect these 2 ideas. Of course, this is just giving us an overview of the concept of continue. So the SAT is, of course, going to have much more difficult relationships that perhaps it might be difficult for the student to find out, which we'll take a look at in the next slide soon. Okay, looking at cause and effect. So cause and effect, one thing is going to happen because of or as a result of the second thing, right? So if we look at this sentence here, I am tired. So this is going to be the cause, right? And then I am going to sleep is going to be the effect. If you're tired, then of course you want to go to bed or you want to go to sleep, right? It's going to be something that causes or it's making something happen because of your tiredness. So you want to use one of these transition words for the connection between these 2 sentences. So you could say, I am tired, so I am going to sleep. I am tired, therefore I am going to sleep, right? All of these words can be used because we know that the cause in this case is going to be the tiredness, and then the effect is going to be you going to bed or sleeping. If you want to use because would be a little different because you want to use because at the beginning of the sentence. So it would be because I am tired, comma, I am going to sleep, right? So depending on each of these transitional words, placement may also be different. So that is something you do want to be aware of. Okay, and the last one we're looking at is reverse. Reverse also means opposite. Okay, so that means we want an idea. If we have this first idea, then we have the second idea. We want something that is going to be the opposite of each other, right? Math is easy. My geometry being a subject within math is easy, and then my geometry grades are low. If your grades are low, then you probably wouldn't think math is easy. How can math be easy, but also your grades being low? That seems somewhat contradictory, right? Or contrary to each other. So we want something that is going to be the reverse or an opposite idea. So we would want to put in something like however, right? That makes that connection much more smoothly. We're transitioning from one idea, but showing us the opposite idea, which is going to be that your math grades are low. Okay, so now that we've identified the three different types of relationships here, this is what you need to know. Always keep this in mind when you're answering these transitional words or transitional phrases type of questions. So the first thing to do, step one, is going to be you want to cross it out. Cross out that transitional word when you're answering the question. Now, this isn't a necessary step, but a lot of students can get easily distracted. So this is going to be helpful for you not to get so distracted. After that, we're going to identify the relationship between the two sentences, the sentence prior as well as the sentence following that transition word. And then finally, you want to eliminate the choices if they're not the relationship that you were looking for. Okay, so diving right in to the example question here. If we look here, we're looking at question 19. So this is going to be our first sentence. And this is going to be our second sentence. Now, first things first, we've already kind of established that we want to cross this out. So cross that out. Okay, and then we want to identify the relationship between this sentence as well as this sentence. Many students themselves are aware of the pitfalls associated with unpaid internships. Okay, and in some instances are speaking out. In 2013, a pair of students at NYU created a petition asking the school's Career Center to remove advertisements for unpaid internships from its websites. Okay, so first thing is, okay, they know the negatives of unpaid internship. And they're speaking out, so they're doing something about it. And then we're going into asking to remove the advertisement, right, from the Career Center. So this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen. So asking to remove the advertisement, we have here, they're speaking out. Speaking out means they're doing something about it, right? Speaking out about it or doing something about the unpaid internship. And then they're telling the Career Center to remove the advertisement about these unpaid internships. So they're doing something about this unpaid internship. So this, of course, has to be a continuation idea. So we want to get rid of anything that is not going to be a continuation idea. So first thing I can remove is a conversely. Conversely is going to be an opposite, right? So since it's going to be an opposite, we do not want that. Same thing with however, it's going to be a reverse or opposite, so we can remove that. So C and D, these are both going to be a continuation. Like I mentioned earlier, continuation, there are little smaller brackets within continuation. Now, this is going to be like an and, right? Moreover, but C, for example, is looking at a specific detail. Now, the question is this going to be just simply a continuation of the idea? We're connecting this idea from one to the next, or are we looking at a specific detail? If we know that we're looking at many students and then they narrowed it down to these students at NYU and specifically looking at one idea or one specific thing they did about speaking out, that one specific thing they did was to ask the Career Center to remove this ad, right? So it has to be this specific detail or the specific idea. So in this instance, C would be our better answer, right? It's going to be better than moreover. So that's how we can eliminate D as well, right? Because we can see that the relationship, while we do know it's continuation, we want to take a look at it a little bit more closely because this is looking at two continuation concepts. So this, for example, is going to be that specific detail, and this asking to remove ad from a specific college student is going to be that specific detail we want. So that's how we can eliminate all of the answer choices and have C as our best answer. Okay, now moving on to the writing. All right, we're going to look at the adding and deleting sentences concept. All right, so adding and deleting sentences can be relevant in a lot of ways. There can usually be like adding or deleting a sentence for a specific paragraph, or it can be adding or deleting sentences for the passage as a whole. So depending on the question that you're looking at, make sure to pay attention to whether it's about the paragraph, that specific paragraph, or if it's going to be about the passage. Normally, we'll have this usually in the beginning or the end of the paragraphs here. Sometimes, in a more rare instance, you can see it in the middle. If you see it in the middle, I would suggest you look at the beginning as well as the information right above that question or that sentence that is going to go inside that paragraph. So same thing with this one, right? Passage, you want to use the surrounding sentences around the question. So this can be also applicable to the middle information as well. Okay, for the passage, you also want to focus on the beginning because beginning is usually where you find the main idea. Now, if we look at the paragraph, if we're specifically focusing on the paragraph, it's different from the passage. You don't want to focus on the beginning or the beginning of the paragraph, but rather you want to focus on the middle, right? The middle or the sentences that follow after that question sentence. Okay. Another thing to note is that specific details are usually going to be wrong. All right. Specific details, especially if we're looking at, well, it could be for both really, but paragraphs at the very beginning or at the very end, they're going to be usually looking at the main idea, right? Or the topic sentence, or it can also be about like wrapping up the passage as a whole. So if we're looking for something that is going to be main idea, we don't like specific details. Okay. So if we look here, these are the three steps that we want to follow is that first you want to read the rest of the paragraph. Now, since this is a time test, obviously you shouldn't spend a lot of time reading through it. If it's just one paragraph though, it is going to be relatively easy for you to spend that time. And because grammar doesn't take as long as reading, this should be easier for you, or you should have enough time to be able to read that paragraph. Okay. And if you're looking at the passage as a whole, again, make sure to focus on the beginning and those surrounding sentences. That'll help you narrow it down as opposed to having to read the entire passage, right? Which is like a couple of paragraphs as a whole. Okay, after you read that paragraph or the rest of the paragraph, you want to restate the topic or the main idea. What are the main points or what are the key points that those specific lines are trying to focus on? What is the overall encompassing idea? That's what you want to do. Restate it in your own words. So don't use the exact words if you can. Don't use the exact words as it is written in the text, but try to think about like a similar, or a synonym to help you restate that topic and main idea. And then after you've done that, you want to make sure to check the answer choices to that topic. Okay, so we've gone over the concept of how to solve these adding or deleting sentences. Now let's look at the question. Okay, here we have which choice, if added here, would serve as the most effective introduction to this paragraph. We're looking for something that is going to fit in right before these lines, right? Right before this line here. So now we want to read the rest of the paragraph and perhaps highlight or note anything that is going to stick out. Additionally, in many of these regions, the populations of amphibians have decreased. Okay, so populations decreased, and then because multiple factors may have contributed to the declines, okay, multiple factors contributing to declines, and then it lists all of these different factors. Biologists do know that porous skin and unshelled eggs of amphibians make them particularly vulnerable to changes in temperature and moisture. Okay, so we know that these specific traits of amphibians are making them vulnerable. To track how these changes are affecting spring peepers, biologists have been recording peepers' date of first call over a period of several years and comparing the data with records from other regions and historical periods. Okay, so what they're trying to do is track the changes, right, and compare that data. All right, so what I gather from this is that a lot of this is basically focusing on these factors, why population is declining. Right? That's what they're looking at. right? Why they're declining, the population declining. They mentioned these factors or the reasons, right? And also looking at some of these other reasons as to why they're vulnerable to changes is another reason why they can potentially decline, right? And then they go into mention the tracking of changes. So ultimately, though, our idea is that our main idea or topic that we want to restate is going to be that why the population is declining. Okay, so here we want to look for the effective introduction. It says one threat to, okay, is this. Okay, right now I can immediately cross this out because they're looking at specifically one threat, right? And they focus in on fungus, but there was no mention of that fungus within the rest of this paragraph. So I would cross out A. In recent years, under rising global temperatures, the date when spring peepers begin to sound their mating call has occurred earlier in some northeastern. Okay, so this one, they talk about the date, right? And they did mention the date here. So potentially I would leave this because it does still have some relevance and they're sounding their mating call earlier, right? So we know that, okay, we're affecting these spring peepers and everything like that. So, okay, that's fine. Outside of the mating season, spring peepers may be found in some woodland ponds, but in general, they are not seen during the winter. Okay, this is about like being seen. And we did mention the population is declining, and then as well as how these spring peepers, right, have been changing, right? So why population declining, spring peepers changing, right? These are two separate concepts that we're really grasping. And so this idea of the like found in some woodland ponds, oh, they do mention the spring peepers, but the date of first call is that mating season, right? So that's why in this instance, okay, maybe I would leave it for now. Let's look at the last one. D, the peepers' calls may be interrupted by late season freezes. However, the frogs can survive freezing temperatures and resume calling once the weather warms again. Okay, so again, here, I don't really see the relevance because they talk specifically about the late season freezes, and none of the other portions really mention the late season freezes, right? So that's why I would cross this out. All right, so I'm left with B and C here. I have this one where they do mention the date, and this date was specifically mentioned about the spring peepers changing, and this occurring earlier is going to be something that changes about the spring peepers. C, outside of the mating season, may be found in woodland ponds, not seen during winter. We're not looking at where they are seen, right? And specifically not outside the mating season, because this is about that mating season. So we don't really care about where they live, but rather just about the spring peepers and how they are different, right? Comparing it but with the other regions and periods. So our best answer is going to be B. Now, when I initially read this, I thought of it as why population was declining was our first and our overall main idea, right? So obviously I could immediately cross out A, but none of these to me seemed obvious. So in this instance, right, you have to think, okay, if this portion was not really about that, why the population is declining, then I want to look at the other half, which is this portion here, and see what is the kind of main idea or overall ideas considering this portion, right? Because it can be that it is in the latter half, but not necessarily in the beginning. So just be aware of that when you do these questions, okay? Make sure to identify exactly the main idea, but also if you can't find it directly, read the passage again and see if there is something else that can support your idea, right? And these ones, this is irrelevant as well as this being irrelevant. These irrelevant ideas is unnecessary. If you don't understand what it's saying, make sure to read through and highlight some of the key words and see if those keywords are either similar, they have synonyms, or are directly restated in here. Now, the reason why this is easier to mention is like the date and their mating call. You can see it might not have said mating call, but it does say date of first call here, right? So that's how you could have also identified that this was relevant to B. Okay, so that's how you solve these types of questions. All right, this was the end of the sample lesson. Thank you.